Hi everyone, thank you for coming along. Today's webinar is looking again at the email and SMS automation features in Glide. We've done a webinar not that long ago on this topic. So today I'm going to focus in quite a lot on messages that are linked to jobs and specifically around the automatic triggering of such messages. So we're going to look a little bit less at general settings and around ad hoc messages or client messages and really focus in on a job and how can we use information we have about our jobs to automatically send messages. Now, what do we mean by send a message? Basically, it means one of two things, and this can vary for all of your automations. It either means sent, done, gone automatically, or it means it's going to be generated and placed into a queue. And the latter approach is useful in two situations. Firstly, whenever you set up a new template, a new automation, I'd always recommend queuing those messages. There's a chance you could have done something wrong, and putting them in a queue will allow you to spot that and change it. And then maybe after the first month, you can start firing those off automatically. And secondly, it's also going to be useful if there is a template that genuinely needs some input from a user. You know, of course, you would want that to go into the queue. And we've got some interesting advances on that line that I'll perhaps mention at the end as well, coming soon. Okay, let's jump in. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully that is visible to you all now. And I'm sat here on a job. This happens to be a VAT return, July 2026. So we are in the future here. And in advance of the webinar, I've actually configured this workflow to have a minimum of five automated messages. So what I'm going to do quite simply is talk you through each of those and the mechanism I've used. Now, when we're thinking of automated messages on jobs, there are two mechanisms that I want to talk about today. One of those is called what we call a workflow action. That means a button is clicked, most probably by a user, or maybe by an API call, or maybe by another message automation. We'll see an example of that today. So a button is clicked. So an event has happened, a button is clicked. That happening can trigger any number of workflow actions. And one of those workflow action types is send an email. So each button can trigger as many of those as you like. So we're going to see that today for when we submit our VAT return. So submitting, of course, the user is going to come in and say, yes, I've submitted it, click, it's done. That's going to send a message to our customer. We're also going to see a button click trigger a message to the manager. And that's going to happen if we've done our automated chases for info and we've still not got the info. So we're going to, at that point, actually notify the manager by a button click. Although that button click is clicked by the final automated email to the client. So, you know, there is actually no user action required on that one. Okie dokie. Then we'll also see the other mechanism, which is called alerts. Now, alerts, of course, you know, thinking back to the workflow actions, if you've submitted a VAT return, of course, the user is going to come in and click submitted. And so that can then trigger the message sending. And that's the best way of doing that. But alerts, if they are appropriate, are sort of better, for want of a better word, because they are fully automated. Whereas with the blue button click, a user comes in and clicks the blue button. With an alert, they simply generate at 9:30 a.m. And depending upon what you have configured in your workflow, they will generate, so queue or send, fully automatically. So, you know, we're hitting a higher level of automation there. And today I'm going to show you examples of that where we request information, chase information again, remind our team member to do the job, and then a payment reminder at the end to remind our client to pay the VAT balance if there is one. And a theme that I think you'll see in the webinar today is those ifs. What does it take to fully launch this system in a practice and maybe have messages being sent off to thousands of clients for thousands of jobs? It's getting the detail right, the nitty gritty. It's relatively easy to get a system to fire off messages on the assumption that all these jobs are similar. Actually, what will bring down a system is where you can't properly cater for unusual scenarios. So maybe you've got jobs where there is no VAT liability or no VAT refund. All those, maybe you've got jobs where you have access to the books and records on Xero, Sage, QuickBooks, etc. So you don't need to chase the info. And being able to handle all those differences is actually the key to success, in my opinion. Okay, so let's have a look at our first one, the info request. Now, I'm kind of I've already set this up, but I'm going to sort of walk through what I have done so you can see that. So I've got 3 tabs open. Let's have another one open in my messaging center. Jump onto the tabs here. So VAT returns. Here are the templates I've done. I went to town on one of them. The others I've kept fairly simple. But the first one then, info request, is right here. So yeah, in reality, you might elaborate on this a bit. I did this just before the webinar, so I've kept it simple. So let's have a look at what I've done. Internal name, of course, no one else is going to see that. It's just a way for you to describe it for yourself. And when we go to configure the automations, we'll be choosing that name. So that's quite helpful, especially if you have several messages with the same subject. Subject line and body of the message. This example here is only merging in 2 fields. Later on, we have examples with more, but whilst we're looking at this, let's take a moment just to look at what we can merge in here. So we have information, sort of core information about our client, the name, the client code, some of the positions I've got set up to manage that client. The recipient. Now, I said I didn't want to do too much nitty-gritty detail in this, but I will come to explain. Recipient is the person receiving the message, or persons if we're sending this to multiple people. So it's different from the client. The client might be Glide Limited, the recipient might be Ben, that sort of thing, or Ben, Dan, Bill, whoever. Client data, absolutely all the fields I've got set up on my client record. Job data, the date, the job holder, the route we're on, the deadlines. Job target dates, the dates we want things to happen. Job actual dates, the date things did happen, all my fields. And then if I'm doing internal messages, I can link back to the client or the job. So yeah, in here, this one is sort of a simple template. It's not going to go wrong. What do I mean by that? When we look at some of the other templates, I'll highlight some fields I'm merging in, and I'll explain a control you need to have in place to make sure it's populated, because that, of course, is really important. But let's conclude. We have our template here to request VAT info. Now, how do we make that go out automatically, let's say a day after the VAT period ends? And in this tab, I'm on my editor, I'm in my VAT return system. Now, first thing to mention is about routes, which you might like to think of as versions of a workflow. You only need one, and quite often people only have one. But when you're going big on email or SMS automation, you might well find it beneficial to have more than one. Now, I've got VAT records requests. So what I mean by that is, we need to ask for the info, which I suspect for small business customers or your customers at smaller businesses, I suspect that's perhaps the declining position, with the move to making tax digital and the popularity of cloud-based software. But I've still got it here as my first one, and that's the one I'm doing today. It actually serves as a good example for the mechanisms that you might certainly still deploy on personal tax returns, year-end accounts, etc. I've got VAT We Do Books Online. Now, why is that important? Well, this second route here is reflecting a situation where we, the accountant, have 24/7 access to something like a Xero, Sage, QuickBooks, etc., system. Now, we are not going to want to ping off the same emails because, of course, we've got access. Maybe we're doing the bookkeeping. Maybe there is no email. If there is an email, maybe it's a different one, just to say, look, we're doing the VAT return. This is quite important. And please make sure you have uploaded your receipts, etc., and reconciled the bank. So everything we talk about today, workflow actions that send messages, alerts that send messages, they are route specific. So we add them onto a route, which we will do. They're not going to happen on a different route. You would need to go into a different route and do the same or something different there. And when we talked at the start about, the quirks, the differences that you need to manage, here's the first one we're bumping into. We might well break our client base down into different sort of cohorts and put them on different routes. I won't go into too much detail today of how we create an additional route or duplicate a route, how we put clients on them. Obviously that help on that is available elsewhere, or just contact the Glide team. But today we're going to be looking at the records request one. And, I've got a stage. My first stage here is to request books and records. Okay, I've got an option here to say the client's on hold, but to request books and records. And my step here is info requested. Now, if you're not doing email automation, then on your job card, you're going to see those two options. You're going to request the info and you will click the button. But with what we're looking at today, we can automate that. So we want to just slide down below our diagram. Before I do, I just want to jump on the elements and have a look at my stage list. Here they are. And I want to draw your attention to this, to request books and records. That is, the stage that I want to send this message on. I just want to look at display order 10. Bear that in mind. So coming back to the route, sliding down below the diagram, we will get to automated job actions. Okay, these are our messages. And where is it? Here we go. I'm doing it 2 days after. So I've already done this, but let me edit it and talk you through the options. So I'm linking it to the job date. That's because I want the job date would be the VAT period end, and I want to send it. It appears 2 days after that. So that's a no-brainer, if you like. We will see examples on my other alerts of linking to an actual date and a deadline, but this one is the job date. If ever you are doing things that can be linked to the job date, it's kind of logical in my mind to do that, because say if you were to link it to an actual date, you introduce the possibility that, oh, what if someone doesn't nudge the job on and we get the actual date? So job date, is there, and that's quite nice. Now, we probably want to send this for absolutely every job, but, I have put in a filter. So release filter means, okay, there's potentially a message here, but do we actually want to send it on this particular job at this moment in time? And we can filter this down to where the job is at. So I, on this one, have decided to only send it, remember from a moment ago, if the current stage of the job has an order value of 10, that's only going to send on if jobs are on to request books and records. So that becomes really important with the chasers. We don't want to be chasing people if they have sent their info in and the job is on a later stage. And having it here is probably sensible, because you might, the second a job creates, before we get to this 2-day point, you might think, oh, do you know what? That's dead simple. I'm going to do it now, and you shoot it through. Or maybe the client knows they're due a refund, and literally a day after the quarter end, they ask you to do the VAT return and you do it. So it is sensible to have this, although I bet every job needs this message going out. So we are basically saying on job date offset plus 2 days, obviously for minus, remember to put in the minus. And if you are doing a minus, make sure you've created your job automatically early enough. But on job date plus 2 days, we're going to send a message if the current stage of that job has an order value of 10. Okay, what are we sending? Well, here's a list of our templates. So I've got VAT info request. This is showing that internal name, or if there isn't one, it will show the subject name. Delivery target. So we can do these externally or internally. We'll see examples of both today. For external, we can either choose, just say, look, grab the email address off of the client record. Okay, and that would do so. It would mean you would send a maximum of 1 message to that client, and it would send if there is an email address. Or you can use your tagging, and I'm actually targeting the VAT return contact. I'm going to show you what that means in a second. I'm going for an email here rather than an SMS. And crucially, this is where, the first bit of automation is you send the email. The second bit of automation is we're actually going to progress the job. So we're going to take the step info requested. Sometimes I like to have a sort of duplicate button that does the same thing, but I call it like brackets automated, and I hide that one from the users. And then you can actually see when you're looking at your actual dates, did someone click that or was it automated? You can see that anyway because the user is shown, but actually you can see which button was clicked, and you could have those buttons doing different things, for example. So that is how I set up my first alert. I'm just trying to think, is there anything else I need to say to fully explain this one? I think we need to zoom in a bit on this delivery target, but really and truly that's a good first example there. So what's going to happen is that 09:30 every morning, Glide will see that we have created this trigger. It's going to look at all of our VAT returns and say, right, are any of our VAT returns exactly 2 days after their job date? Okay, so on, for example, the 2nd of September, it would go, oh, look, here's a load of August returns. We need to consider these ones. Then it would say, okay, of those August returns, are any of them on the stage to request info? And probably they all are for this one, but it would filter out any that aren't. Then it would say, okay, we've got 10 jobs here. We need to send this template to the VAT return contact. And when we've done it, and if we do it, because there is the possibility that there's no linked contact, only if we successfully do it, take this step. Great. So the only thing I think I want to just drill in, let's get the client record open on another tab here, is if I'd have gone for external basic setting, it would have come to the client record and grabbed that email. Because I instead went for a tag, it's going to come to the contacts tab. It's going to look at all the linked contacts, and it's going to send it to none or one or several people, basically anyone with the appropriate tag. So in this case, it's Jane Moneypenny. So it's going to send it to Bennett Glide. And just to link this right back, if you recall, where's my template gone? Have I got that open? Good question. Yeah, here it is. We've gone for in here using information about the recipient from here. Now, we can always do that where we are targeting, where we're targeting a person on the contacts, because the first name, surname will work if we're sending to a person. So if you want to link contacts, they have to be people. They can either be your individual clients, or you might set up just other people that that aren't clients, bookkeepers, spouses, whatever the case may be, employees. So if we target a tag, we're going to better safely use the recipient first name, recipient surname merge fields. If we went for the basic setting and it just came here and grabbed this email, it's only those merge fields of first name, surname will only work if we happen to be sending to an individual client. It would not work on an organization like a limited company. Also, you can just apply the tag to the client without linking someone on here. Again, that is not going to find a first name or a surname unless the client happens to be an individual. Now, you might say, well, what's the point in this? Well, the reason you can do that is because here we're using tags to find the appropriate person to send to, but you could also use tags to differentiate your messages. I don't want to go too much detail into this, but you'll recall, where is my editor gone? Here it is. You will recall we've set up different routes for records request and we do books. And thus my alert here is only on this one is only on clients that are on this route. Imagine we didn't do that. And I don't recommend this, but imagine we just had one VAT return route and we wanted to send one email to people that we request info for and a different email to online people. We could actually do that. We could just have 2 alerts on one route and target a different tag. And then what you do on the client is you would maybe still against a contact apply one tag or the other, not both, because they get both emails. And that's why, supposing you're happy with just grabbing the basic email from the client record, but you need that filter. That's why you're allowed to add tags on here. Anyway, don't want to get too much into the nitty gritty because I'm conscious 22 minutes in and I'm still on my first of 5. So I need to speed up a little bit. Okay, so yeah, that is the first one. So what's going to happen is, what is this? 31st July 2026. On the 2nd of August 2026, if we are still on this stage, that message will be sent and it will click the info requested button. Now, I can't, that happens at 9:30 in the morning. It's currently 12:30 in sort of late morning, early afternoon. So I can't show you that happening, unfortunately. But there we go. Let's imagine it did and move ourselves on. Okay, so this brings me on to the next example, which is chasing information up. It's going to be remarkably similar, but a slightly different alert. Here, I've got a manual info chase button, which we can click if we are manually chasing. And I've actually got my 2 automated chasers clicking their own buttons. Now, I would hide these from users, and I'll show you how to do that. I've just left them visible here so we can look at them. Okay, so let's have a look at my templates then. Where has that tab gone? Here it is. Let's get back to the list. So I have created, where is it? Chasing VAT return info. Again, I've not gone mad. What have I got in here? We contacted you on the, so I've got the actual date for books and records requested. Okay, now I can safely do that because I know from my diagram that I'm only going to send my chaser if we're on this stage. And I know that you can only get to this stage if you've gone through this stage. So it's very safe for me to merge in. Sorry, I keep jumping onto the wrong tab. For me to merge in the actual date. We contacted you on the whatever day to request all the information we need to prepare VAT return for client name. Always useful to have the client name because you might have an individual that's linked to 10 companies that will help guide them to the correct company or client for the period to that. The VAT return needs to be submitted by, I've got the VAT deadline in there. Again, deadlines are generated the millisecond the job creates. So you can always refer to them. Don't worry about them not being there. You can filter deadlines. So like on a year-end accounts flow, if you've got incorporated and unincorporated clients on that flow, you might filter a deadline. You then need to be a little bit careful to be sending the right templates, etc. Including the balance, we would like to be able to send you a draft return, including the balance of VAT due to be paid by the, I'm getting a target date here. So I'm telling them when I want to get them their draft return. Accordingly, we'd be grateful if you could send all the information by the, and I've got another target date here. Now, is it safe? How do we know these are going to pull in dates? Well, we know that because you see, I've got 2 target dates there. Now, I have generated those. If you were filling in those target dates manually, I'd be worried because, you know, we'd have to put in a traffic light or something to make sure they're filled in because you're relying on people. But what I'm doing is on my job creation step, here it is, I'm generating both of those target dates. So again, when the job generates, it's guaranteed those 2 dates are there. Absolutely guaranteed. So I can safely merge them in. Equally, if I was triggering those target dates when the info is requested, we know we've gone through that step, so we know they'll be there. That's always worth thinking about. So, okay, where's it gone? Where's it gone? Here it is. So I'm, you know, again, a very low risk template here. Everything is going to be filled in. By the way, when I say low risk, you know, the ones that are a bit riskier, we have techniques to make sure they find all their data. Don't worry. But this one is very simple. I'm not concerned at all. So we've got our template. Let's go back to the editor. And basically, we're going to send both of these if the job is on the stage awaiting books and records. Now, that filter is suddenly super important because the last thing you want to do is chase people up if you've already clicked the info receive button. Okay, and you'll see here, the first one I'm going to make click this button. It's just going to go nowhere. We'll stay on this stage. The second one, my second automated email will click this button, which actually is going to put me on awaiting info manual chase up. Now, why do we do that? Well, I like this because on my progress monitor, suppose I'm the manager or director or preparer, whatever, rather than just lumping them all into one, it splits it between awaiting books and records. Now, I know that I've got 2 automated chases going to those clients. If the second one goes out, I've actually got it moving the job into here. And what that says to me is actually you need to chase these guys up. I think I've got that on day 15. You know, I would think it's a good idea, even with, say, personal tax returns, where people do a monthly chaser, maybe do it on month 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then nudge it into a different stage and phone them or text them, because if they've ignored 5, it's feasible they might ignore them all, or maybe they've changed their email address and not told you, or something like that. So I think that's a really good idea, to use automation for a while and then automatically highlight that the job really needs some manual intervention. So let's have a look at the alerts for this then. They are down here. Here's the first one. So again, I'm linking it to the job date. You could say actual date of when you requested info plus, yeah, I won't change the setting because I'll lose the rest of it, but you could do that. But I'm just linking it to job date. Why not? Because I know I want to do this 10 days after that quarter end. So job date plus 10 days. So we did our initial request on 2. We've given them 8 days to do it. We're chasing them up. And I'm only sending if we're on a stage with an order value of 20. I didn't show you it a second ago, but the next one is 20. Critical, because you don't want to chase it if you've, not even requested it, which obviously would never happen, or if far more likely, if the info's in, you don't want to chase it up. That would really annoy people. So that's crucial. I've chosen the template. I'm going for that same contact tag. It's an email. And this one, the offset 10 one, is clicking the first auto chaser. My next one, identical, but offset is 15. And I'm clicking the info chase second auto chaser. So if the info is not in on the 15th, 15 days after the quarter end, they're going to get a second reminder and the job will progress automatically down to this stage. Now that is both visually letting all the people that are looking at it, and this isn't really a dashboard webinar, but of course, anyone that's got it set to all will see all of them, or if you've got it set to linked, then, the whatever it is, director, partner, manager, VAC manager, preparer, reviewer, that they will see that it's in there. Now, as a supplementary thing, I've actually got another template. I don't think this is necessary. I think the dashboards work really well, but because I'm doing a webinar about showing you how to do emails, I wanted to do this. I have created a template called Inform Manager that manual chasing is required. So you'll see here, please chase client name for that info to job date. Hi, recipient first name, so that'll be the manager. We have chased client name for that info twice, but it's not yet been recorded received. Please contact them by phone, and a reminder of the deadline. I guess the deadline's obvious, but why not? So how have I got that linked in? I could just do another alert on the same date. That would be fine. But actually, I've done my first example here of a blue button press sending an email, albeit no one's going to have to click the button because that second chaser automatically clicks it. And then if we shoot right down here to the text editor and find that step, here it is. So there's the first auto chaser, doesn't go anywhere. Second one moves to the stage to there and it sends an email. So here's our first example of getting a button to send an email. Be careful, don't have an alert send and click a button that then sends the same email to the same person. That would be mad. But we've got the alert sending an email to the client. It moves the job on. And additionally, so we can just click create new action to create these. You can do as many as you like. I'm going to edit this action. I've got an action, send an email using a template. These are simpler to configure than the alerts because we just need to know which template do you want to send. There they are. Who do you want to send it to? And again, we've got external basic, external tags, internal specific, internal position. I'm sending it to client manager position. So there we go. That will automatically happen. Now, okay, that's, yeah. So we would actually hide these two buttons. Let's quickly look at how we would do that. Go back up to our visual editor. I would say that one, yeah, the user, if they do happen to do an ad hoc chase by themselves, they can click that button. So we'll just put this as totally hidden, and we'll put this as totally hidden. And then if we go back to our job card, hit refresh, that's what's being presented to the user. But crucially, when you drill in to see what's happened, you would see the button name there, the automatic ones. Okay, great. So now we have requested, we've chased up once, we've chased up twice, we've let the manager know that they need to now do a bit of chasing. So what happens next? Well, at some point, obviously, we're going to click info received, and the jobs in my workflow, the job's now ready to start. Now, that clicking of info received could send a message to the preparer to say, this job is in, crack on with it. Maybe here's when we want to do it by, or whatever. But with internal messages, I tend to recommend avoiding setting them up so that the preparer gets a message on every job, guaranteed. Because if they're doing lots of them, they might grow tired of those emails. Now, there's a couple of solutions to that, one of which is relevant to this webinar, and I'll show you today. The other option would be to have, you can have a workflow action that triggers a webhook. So if you're clever with stuff like Zapier, or you happen to employ a computer programmer, you could have it linking in with the sort of communication platforms that are now so popular, like Teams, Slack, etc., etc. So that would be less annoying than getting an email every time, quite substantially less annoying, because you can put it in a channel called sort of that alerts or something. But what I recommend with the email, and it's another example of an alert, is don't send it on that blue button just because the job's ready. What I have done instead is I have got, and I've so many tabs again, I'm getting lost. I have got this one called reminder to start the VAT return. Please complete the VAT return. Quick reminder, the VAT return for blah, blah, blah is here, basically. And how have I got that? I've got that being sent by an alert. So let's just find that alert down here. This one is linked to an actual date for books and records received. And I'm only sending it if we're on 25, which is ready to start. And I'm sending it 3 days after the day the books and records were received. So what we're sort of doing here is we're sort of saying, okay, if you crack on straight away or a day later or 2 days later, you're not going to get an email. If the job's still sat around 3 days later, you will get an email. And I think that's a good balance, because if people say, oh, what am I getting this email for? You say, well, if you do the job a bit quicker, you wouldn't get one. And of course, there's other ways of achieving it. You could link that to a target date. Of course, you'd want to guarantee that there is a target date set. So either make it automatic or have a traffic light to say you must be a target date, one or the other. Where there's an actual date, it is just simpler to use the actual date. So the difference we've got here compared to what we've seen before is that I am targeting a preparer position. Now, let's just have a look, be a first example here of how do we know there is a preparer? Let's go and find that out. We're doing an email. We don't need to progress the job here. Of course, you could have a little loopy button that says automatically remind a preparer if you wanted an actual date on the job card. No harm there. Okay, so in our workflow, I have got a preparer. I think I had a regular preparer, and when the job created, it automatically went to them. But I think I've got this in already. Let me just do this. If I didn't have a preparer, so let's unset that. I think, no, I haven't. No. Interesting. Okay. So what I could do is I could and you might want to rearrange your stages slightly to do this, but where's the editor gone? Here we go. I could find that button info received. Where is it? Here it is. And I could say, okay, what I'm doing when we click info received is I'm setting the job holder to the preparer, or if one is not found, I'm putting it in the pool. Instead of doing that, I could just say, right, you are not allowed to click that button unless we have a preparer. Now, the reason, obviously, I've decided to do it differently. These methodologies are contradictory. You do one or the other, but I want to show that as an example, because then if you imagine here, we're not allowed to click that unless we say who the preparer is. Personally, I don't like to put that traffic light on the info received. If someone's received info, they need to be able to click that button straight away. They might not know who's preparing it. So this is slightly bad, but it's serving the purpose of explaining this. So we would say preparer is Fraser. And the reason it's important is because we now know that when that alert tries to send to a preparer, it is guaranteed to find one. And that is something we'll see again a bit later on. Right, okay, we're making good progress here. We've speeded up a bit. We've got 23 minutes to go. My next message, of course, you know, review points, that could all trigger emails. Again, same debate around, do we message someone every time? They're probably looking at their dashboard anyway, so don't need it. Should we do an alert if they don't respond to it? That's all good. Again, here I've actually got my reviewer being mandated at this point, so that's great. You know, and actually this is something I wasn't going to talk about today, but actually I want to on the diagram, and you'll see this on a lot of my templates, in progress. Now you could just have passed for review or whatever your step forward is, sent to client, whatever it might be. And of course, this is one of the things where I think Glide really shines as being very useful, both for workflow tracking and then by implication for email automation. You know, if you were just sort of doing a basic tracker with milestones, you'd just be like, return done. You know, maybe you'd have sort of queries sent just to record the date, but what does it do? Well, I don't like to see on a dashboard just loads of jobs building up and in progress. So I like to design in these buttons. If there's been an interaction with the client, have a button the user can click. It records the fact that you've done that. You know, there we go. That is recorded on there. If the client ever questions our turnaround time, we've captured that data. But more importantly, for email and SMS automation, we've parked the job on here, in progress queries with client. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means we could, if we wanted to, have alerts on that actual date plus 5 days. I mean, like, how many days do you have for the VAT return? Not many, but let's say this is year-end accounts. Like 7, 14, 21 days later, we could be chasing them. Now, you can only fully automate that because you have those jobs sat on that stage, because that becomes your filter. You know, and this is where the precision that these workflow diagrams offer really facilitates automation. If the jobs are in here, along with a load that don't have queries, you're really going to struggle to find a way to automate chasers in a reliable fashion. Likewise, your resolved button stops those reminders from coming out. Anyway, I haven't done that as one of my examples, so let's progress onwards. Yeah, queries chased, queries resolved. We've pinged back to in progress. Let's go for review. Okay, to send to client. Of course, that probably could trigger a message, although, you know, let's be clear here about what Glide really is good at and where you might not use Glide to send an email. Sending out a VAT return, you know, what I remember from being in practice, you're probably going to type up, this might be an ad hoc one, which isn't the topic of today's webinar. You're going to type it up, you might talk about a few points, you know, it might be highly personalized. As we're seeing today, Glide excels at automating things that are capable of being put in a template, merging in data, and being the email you want them to be. Doesn't really apply when you want to have a conversation in a very, you know, sort of bespoke ad hoc fashion with a customer in an email. And to me, although sending out a VAT return is relatively mundane, actually, you know, imagine if they say there was $5,000 of VAT claimed on a big capital item, you'd probably draw their attention to that, explain that that has pulled the balance down, explain that if it's on, I can't remember the rules, but if it's on the sort of high purchase, they need to have it, whatever. So those emails, I'd class them as more conversational ad hoc. I don't tend to see them in Glide. So if it is just a template, then you can do it. But anyway, let's continue. Because my next example is after the client's approved. It's here, and this is actually fascinatingly has 4 options. And if you weren't doing email and SMS automation, Yeah, sorry, I've forgotten to put my phone on silent, haven't I? If you weren't doing email and SMS automation, you only need one button here, submitted. For the purpose of workflow tracking, that's all you care about. Have we submitted it? If you want to automate emails, you need more. But I've actually now, I used to have 2. When I last did this webinar, I had 2. We've grown, we have 4. So we've got submitted, balance due, manual payment. We've got submitted refund. We've got submitted balance due paid by direct debit, and we've got submitted no balance or refund due. There might be more scenarios I have not yet thought of. So what's the relevance here? Well, basically, these 3 are sending an email, but the email needs to be different in each case. Therefore, I have 3 templates. Let's find them. Here we go. So we've got on submission, liability due, manual payment. So the manual payment one goes big into, it's got a couple of nice tables. We're merging in the VAT reg number, the liability. That's telling people how to pay their VAT. It's also saying, look, why don't you just set up, it's got a spelling mistake, sorry. Why don't you set up direct debit? We've then got one where direct debit is in place. And I'll show you something else I've done to make sure we click the right one. This one is, of course, we're not going to tell them to pay their VAT if we know there's a direct debit in place. We're just going to say, look, we believe you have a direct debit. Let us know if that's not the case. That one also merges in the VAT liability for their information. The refund merges in the refund amount. So we need to know, we need 3 buttons to trigger 3 of these, but also the liability and the refund are job fields. So job fields are great for capturing little ad hoc bits of info that you wish to merge into one of your templates. So if we just go into here and edit this one, let's edit this big monster. Job data, I think that's actually in the next version of Glide will be renamed job fields to be consistent with what you see on the job card. There it is, VAT liability, VAT refund. Okay, so 3 different templates, each merging in a value that needs to be entered by a user. We can't default this value from the client card or anything like that. It changes every job. We need to capture it. So look, it's going to be entered down here, VAT liability, VAT refund. I vastly prefer having 2 fields, not just one and hoping the user puts in a minus. So we have used a traffic light, a bit like I did earlier with the preparer, to say you cannot click this button unless you have typed a value in here. So the 2 that merge in liability want me to fill out liability. The one that merges in refund wants me to fill out refund. So let's say we owe £500.55. Okay, we're now allowed to click. Okay, we're allowed to click one of these. Why am I not allowed to click this one? Because I actually store on the client record, let's jump in here on the VAT tab, I have a field called DD in place for payment. I should probably have a question mark there. And I am storing for this client, yes, this client has a direct debit in place. So I'm then looking at that value to say, okay, you've filled in VAT liability, which in theory means you could send these 2 templates. But I know that this client doesn't balance due manual payment. Oh, okay. When I did this before the webinar, I've done it literally the wrong way around. Apologies. I should have checked that really. I'm allowing them to push the yeah, like I'm blocking the wrong one. Sorry. That was silly of me. But you get the idea. We can block these buttons based upon client data. And this is all about just minimizing as much as possible the risk that someone clicks the wrong button. So I can then click that one, and this one will send a message. And if I look at my diagram for my workflow, where has that gone? Here it is. We are down here. Submitted, and I'm glad to actually have this panned out because I wanted to click this one because then we see the payment reminder. So paid by direct debit, refund, no balance or refund, they all complete the job. Balance due manual payment puts me on a stage called send payment reminder. Okay, so let's do that. There we go. That ticked off my deadline. I'm on a stage send payment reminder. Now, this is fully automated. So we might actually have wanted that button to remove the job holder. Let's say that no one needs to see this job on their jobs held widget. And what I've got this doing is I've got two options for the users. The users could say, I actually want to send this now. Obviously, you don't have to have that option, but that's there. That would send, if we just go into the editor, it looks like I haven't done it yet. So yeah, manually send now. That one could have an action saying, send an email using a template, payment reminder the day before the deadline, that return contact. So because I've got that button sending a message now, you'll see the icon there. I've also got, look, a button so we can just complete the job and not get the auto reminder. Again, you might not want or like that, just get rid of it, you know. But what I have got set up is I've got a, where's the editor gone? I have my final alert here, and it's the first one that we see that is linked to a deadline. So it's on the VAT payment deadline, -1 day, so it's the day before the deadline. We're only sending if the stage order value equals 70, that is the stage order value for my payment reminder. So again, if there was a refund or no balance or it's direct debit, it didn't go on that stage, we're never going to send this. So nitty-gritty control, always working, you know, those sort of keywords. That's my template, blah, blah, blah. It's going to take the step payment reminder sent automatically. And if we look at the diagram, on this tab, it will automatically take the button payment reminder sent automatically. That was hidden to users. They can't click it, but it would do that. It would complete the job. Okay. So yeah, you know, some people break the payment reminder out into a different sub job. That's cool. You can do that as well if you wanted to. You know, the minor downside of that stage is that on your dashboard, let's go to your dashboard, you know, the job hangs around, but not for long. Let's be honest with VAT. And you can just ignore that final stage. Like I say, you could wipe the job holder, so it's not in the jobs held list. So that will, on deadline -1, send it. It'll automatically finish it. There we go. So we have got to 12:50. I obviously speeded things up there. I've got 10 minutes of time remaining. What to mention? Obviously, there's all those settings, etc., that I covered in the previous webinar, which, you know, I wasn't really going to go over in lots of detail, but let's sort of whiz through some of them as a reminder and draw your attention to some of the more important ones. So before you start sending messages at all, you'd want to come and look at these. Email settings here, SMS here, these are your defaults. It might be you never ever use these defaults because your templates have their own settings. We'll look at those as well. But if you just want all messages to come from one email address, you'd simply do this. So from name, you know, that's the key bit of information that people see in their email inbox. You know, nowadays, 20 years ago, they might have seen the email address. Nowadays, you see the from name and the from address, and that doubles as when they hit reply, that's who they're going to reply to. Default signature, BCC, etc., etc. So fill those out. Do be sure, if you are using the default server, which is Glide, which is using our integration with SendGrid, do be sure to contact us to set up domain authentication. That is nowadays really important because it will ensure that messages sent by Glide benefit from SPF records, I think I've used the right word there, and a DKIM signature, which is the full pretty much suite of email security. The latter, the DKIM, allows an email sort of receiving email server to check it's not been modified in transit, which, you know, is typically an issue lawyers used to face with conveyance and stuff like that. But of course, we are doing emails here telling people to pay VAT, which might be a substantial amount of money. So that's really important. Now, what if you wanted some of those emails we've seen to come from, let's say, a dynamic setting like the VAT preparer? This is where we want advanced email sending rules. I've got a couple set up here, so this is great. So basically, the from name, the from address, the signature can be set on a per template basis. So we might say that we want our reminders to click OK. We might say we want them to come from, I'm currently on just a manually entered value I could type in. You can set it to be from any of your client or job positions. Now, do just bear in mind that if you choose one of these like preparer, it's another thing that you need to think, right, we need to make sure there's a preparer, you know, so again, traffic light to block it before the button sends it, or for an alert, same concept really. If the alert is sending on stage 3, awaiting records, make sure you're blocking a button on stage 1 or 2 to say you must have a preparer. Then you know this bit of data will be found. So you can do these, you click on the red to activate them. There we go. Server preferences, yeah, lots of nitty gritty here. Glide's default, you can use SMTP, exchange connectors, that sort of thing. Also have a look at this. Your emails are set to be queued before sending. That really should be your default setting. Queue everything. And then what you do, once you're happy with a message, come in here and mark it to send. I've got mine as queue because all the emails you've seen in this are made up. So there's no point in me really sending them. But yeah, you know, you can then have a template specific setting to send. Okay, what other options do we want to talk about? Do you know, SMS, of course. SMS is identical in every way to everything we've said about email. The difference really is that if you're doing a template for SMS, you've just got to keep it short. Off the top of my head, I haven't come armed with the character limits, but obviously an SMS is it 120 or 160? And Glide can bolt several together to make a longer message, but there is a limit. So be careful when typing in them, especially if you're merging in a field that potentially could be long. Even someone's name, you might think, well, typically that's going to be less than 20 characters, but someone might feasibly have a very long name. Obviously things like VAT reg number, that's predictable in length, which is nice. Okay, great. Yeah, Glide, that's the name of my business, you know, my accounting practice, Glide Demo 2, yours would be there. Messaging Center, that's where I've been coming a lot today. Ignore all my nonsense here that, you know, just test data. This is where you come to see your messages. If you've queued them, you can look at ones in the queue. If you have advanced centrals, like a template specific from address, etc., and there wasn't a preparer, something we've explained how to avoid that, they're being queued, missing data. Now you can see, let me see if there's any sort of sensible, yeah, we can see here date stamps around when they're sent, delivered, opened. A word of warning on the opened. The opened is available when using the SendGrid connection. And we're just starting to see the sort of potential impact of Apple's recent mail privacy policy. I think it stands for MPP, whereby Apple, if users within their Apple Mail settings do a tick on a setting, they can actually force Apple to pre-download all images to deliberately fool that opened. So we're having to sort of reassess at the moment whether we want to present that information or not. That's sort of something we're looking at the moment. Final few minutes. I mentioned earlier some upcoming changes. One really exciting thing on the way is that we're having a new type of client and job field called sort of HTML. So it will be a bit like when you create these templates, where have they gone here? So you actually have client and job fields where you do this. And the reason we're doing that is because on that initial info request, often a template will have a bulleted list of info. But what if it needs to be different for a certain client? Now, currently your email template could merge in a long text field, but it doesn't have like bullet points in it. So it's a basic text. So we're adding in more of a rich text field. So you can do that. So that'll be out soon. Okay, we're 4 minutes to 1. So I'll call it a day here. I hope that has been useful. This has been recorded, and I will ping it up on our YouTube, Vimeo, etc. channels. And I'll stop recording in a second, but I'll hang around as well in case anyone's got any questions. I don't need to be anywhere for another sort of half an hour. So thank you very much, everyone, for your time. As ever, if you've got any queries whatsoever, do contact us either using the blue widget in the bottom right corner or emailing any addresses you normally email, or calling us at the phone number found on our website, 01733 602 280. We're always here to help. And actually starting email automation, SMS automation is a big project. And yeah, we'd be more than happy to assist you in taking those steps. I feel like I should have also mentioned that SMS costs 5p. There is an SMS balance. We incur a cost of 5p and we pass that on. That's to ensure we work with a trustworthy SMS server provider that will safeguard data. Great stuff. Okay, thank you very much. And we will stop it there. Cheers.